welcome to the Ghosts and Folklore podcast. I'm Mark Rees, and on each episode, I investigate a different, weird, and wonderful subject. And on this episode, we are going to look at accounts of ghosts, goblins, poltergeists, spooky dogs, haunted bridges, and buried treasure. This really is a mixed bag of curiosities, all designed to send a chill down your spine. And so, to begin at the beginning. And I'd like to begin by letting you in on a little secret. Because when I'm writing and researching these episodes, quite often I'll come across a fascinating account of a haunting or a really quirky piece of folklore, but for whatever reason I can't use them quite yet. So I save them all up in a folder and I wait until I can find a use for them. Usually this might be because a tale is too short on its own and I need 2 or 3 similar ones to bulk it out to make a full episode. For example, I've been sitting on this story for a few years now about this ghost haunting Port Talbot that seemingly thrives on attention. This is an attention-seeking ghost. According to the people I spoke to, 3 people, 2 of which knew each other, and then a third person as well, separately, it likes to scream and shout, to slam doors, to turn lights on and off, to do anything it can to get your attention. And when it does, it just stops. Just like that, it stops. If you do anything to give it attention, it could even be just turning your head. But if you get up, if you go and investigate, wherever it might be, it suddenly stops. It reminds me a bit of the Doctor Who episode Blink, where if you look, there's nothing. But when you look away, all hell breaks loose. And this haunting wasn't confined to just a house. It was the street. It was the general area. And when I was told this, I thought this is a fantastic story. This will make a fantastic episode. However, as you can probably tell, it's a bit short. As it stands, this would make a 2-minute episode. So I put it into my folder and I thought when I've got more information or when I've got a similar account from elsewhere, I'll put it all together and make one great episode. But sadly, that never happened. Which is why on this episode I am having a declutter. I am going to unleash some of those wonderful stories that have been gathering dust in that folder for years in some cases, starting with that creepy tale from Port Talbot and moving on to our next account, a local legend about a house called Bryn Sawdde. Bryn as in hill, Bryn Sawdde in Llan Gadog in Carmarthenshire. And this mansion, we are told, was home to a very ancient Carmarthenshire family. And it was also the setting for various weird happenings. Of these, we are told, perhaps the most interesting and certainly the most inexplicable concerns the late owner's death, which dates this story to roughly 100 years ago, maybe a little bit before that, but we're looking at the early 20th century maybe. And the owner is described as a well-known character in the country, so this wasn't just some nobody who dropped dead. This was a man of wealth and standing with a big fancy house. And it was said that on the day he died, a small black dog appeared, from whence no one knew, leapt on the bed and lay across the dead man's face. And I did warn you this was going to be a slightly random episode of stuff that, frankly, I don't quite know what to do with, and this is a great example of that. Let me repeat that last line. It was said that on the day he died, a small black dog appeared, from whence no one knew, leapt on the bed and lay across the dead man's face. And as I'm sure you can imagine, the friends and family gathered there, sobbing by his bedside, did not appreciate this. They had no idea whose dog this was, no idea where it had come from. They were unimpressed, and they chased it away until it disappeared. Now, it doesn't specify if this has disappeared Like a ghost, it vanished, disappeared through a wall or a puff of smoke, or whether it just disappeared from their sight. But either way, it had disappeared, but not for long. Because it was seen again sometime later, we are told, sitting on the coffin after the lid had been screwed down. So this dog that nobody recognised, not content with jumping on a dead man's face, is now jumping on a dead man's coffin. How bad can it get? Well, funny you should ask, because after the funeral, a whisper started to go around the mourners who were gathered there that apparently the dog was back and had jumped into the back of the hearse as the coffin was being put into it. So, if we're going to rate dogs on a good boy, bad boy scale, and of course this might have been a female dog, but just using the good boy, bad boy scale for now, I think this dog, certainly in the minds of the mourners, is falling definitely into the bad boy end of things rather than the good boy end of things. This is beyond simply stealing some food and begging at lunchtime. This is a dog that has jumped on your dead relative's face, your dead relative's coffin, and now is hitching a ride in your dead relative's hearse. Could it possibly get worse? Well, there is more to come, because we are told that later it had appeared slinking like some evil thing, which is a great description. I don't use the word slinking enough. Slinking like some evil thing through the knot of mourners at the graveside and was never seen again. So the final sighting of this dog, or the final sighting recorded in this account, is of an evil-looking dog slinking through the mourners who are standing by the grave, paying their final respects. And this, to me, brings to mind ideas like the Welsh death omens, where strange lights, sounds, and, of course, animals can signal that something bad is going to happen. However, in this case, this all seems to be happening after the event. This isn't something warning us of a death that is imminent. This is taking place immediately after a death. And I've recorded many episodes about spooky dogs over the years, like the Gwyllt, the ghostly hounds that stalk the wilds of Wales at night, or the Cŵn Annwn, the mythological dogs who form part of the Wild Hunt. But when I came across this account, I thought, what do you do with a dog that jumps on people's faces when they're dead and their coffins and slinks around in graveyards afterwards? Well, what I did was put it into a folder of great stuff to go back to, and now I've dusted it off and I'm sharing it with the world on this episode of completely random ghosts and folklore. And while that brings us to the end of this particular account of this dog, it's not the end of the accounts concerning this mansion in Llan Gadog, because in the years after these events, another account speaks of a group of people returning from a dinner party in the neighbourhood, and as they passed Bryn Souther, which, as locals, they knew full well was entirely uninhabited, they were astonished to see every window of the house brightly illuminated as if for some great festivity, some great ghostly festivity. And on making inquiries, they discovered there wasn't the slightest explanation for the lights ever forthcoming. So, two spooky accounts about two totally different kinds of phenomena, but both connected to the same building and the same family, which, of course, may be totally unconnected, or maybe there is some glaringly obvious connection that I have missed. Maybe you, dear listener, can find a way to knit these two things together. If so, answers on a postcard. But whatever the connection, if indeed there is a connection, they make great little stories, which is why I hung onto them. Now, let's move on to our next account. And this one concerns spooky goblins. I did warn you this was going to be a random episode. Spooky goblins, and this tale is entitled Two Young Women and the Goblin. A great title, Two Young Women and the Goblin, and it comes to us courtesy of the Reverend J. Jones. I do love accounts that come to us from men of the cloth. This Reverend of Bryn Meherin near Ystrad Meirig. and it concerns a goblin, although we should take the word goblin very loosely here, but it concerns a goblin who plays a trick on these two young girls. And we are told that two young women, daughters of a farmer in the parish of Llandysil, were walking home one night from Lampeter Fair. And after reaching the very field in which the farmhouse stood where they lived, in the corner of the field, instead of going to that house, they walked around for hours and hours before they could find the building, even though it was a clear moonlit night. So, to recap quickly, the moon was shining bright in the Welsh sky that night, and for some inexplicable reason, these young women who were walking home, they could not find their house. It seemed as if the farmhouse had vanished, we are told. And they told the reverend who recorded this tale that they were convinced this was the doings of the goblin playing a trick on them. And this account is wrapped up by telling us that the Welsh for goblin is Ellyll. E-L-L-Y-L-L, which of course is a tricky word. This is a word I've discussed before, and it has many meanings. Yes, it's being used for goblin here. It's also commonly used for elf. It can be used for demon. It can be used for many, many things. In the 19th century, a lot of these words were interchangeable. Ghosts and goblins, they could mean the same thing, and they could mean totally different things. I've recorded full episodes about all of them. But in this case, these two women who you'd like to think would not lie to a man of the cloth, they would not lie to this reverend, they believed that in this case they had been tricked by a goblin. Whatever it might have been, this supernatural force is what they blamed for seemingly hiding their home from them, which meant they didn't arrive home until very early in the morning. And I'm sure the good reverend did not doubt their word for a moment, but of course these young women who were out maybe partying at Lampeter Fair, which in the 19th century I'm sure Lampeter Fair was just one big non-stop rave. Maybe they had other reasons for stumbling in late, but without further evidence we'll just have to take their word for it that it was in fact a goblin that was hiding their house from them. Which brings us to the end of that random tale and leads us nicely into our next random tale, which concerns hidden treasure. That is the only tenuous link really, is the word hidden. The last one concerned a hidden house. This concerns hidden treasure. And this is a topic I have recorded several episodes about, and the reason I think I didn't include this at the time, and this is testing my memory now, this is going back a few years, but I think I left this out at the time because while it's a great story, it was very similar to one or two of the others I was telling on the same episode. And I thought, well, rather than repeat similar stories, let's save that one for another day. And now here it is, finally having its moment in the sun, as it were. And the full title of this tale is A Ghost Revealing Hidden Treasure to a Farmer in the Parish of Llanafan. And people moan about spoilers nowadays. That's a pretty spoiler-tastic title. As I record this episode, there's a big fuss in the pop culture world about Marvel changing the name of their film Thunderbolts, asterisk, into a name that spoils a part of the story, which I won't spoil here. But spoilers clearly weren't a concern a century or so ago in the world of Welsh folklore. In this story, which is called A Ghost Revealing Hidden Treasure to a Farmer in the Parish of Llanafan. And the author of this account, the person who wrote it down originally, tells us that it was in Crosswood Park, which they describe as the fine residence of their esteemed young friend, the Earl of Lisburn, which is situated about 9 miles from Aberystwyth. And about 2 miles from the park is a bridge over the River Ystwyth, known as Pont Llanafan Bridge. And we are told that, to quote, the bridge is supposed to be haunted, and I have been told that a ghost has been seen there lately by a gentleman who lives in the district. So this bridge, just down from Crosswood Park, is said to be haunted. And he adds that Mr. John Jones, a man of 95 who lives at Pontryd Vendigheid, informed me that the origin of this ghost is to be traced to some former days when retired pirates, yes, pirates, lived in a house near the bridge and who was supposed to have hidden some treasure in the spot. And I do love a pirate connection on this podcast. I especially like the idea of retired pirates. You can just imagine these old pirates with their feet up. Now they're a bit more civilized. They're not swashbuckling on the high seas anymore. They're just kicking back by this river, which later we will discover is haunted. And Wales, of course, did lead the way in pirating. Good old Captain Morgan before he started making rum. And I think I promised years ago to record a pirate episode. Either way, I'll put that back on my to-do list. I'm long overdue a pirate episode. But back to this random episode. And according to the 95-year-old John Jones, at least, this haunting can be traced back to the days when retired pirates lived in a house near the bridge. And maybe they've also hidden some treasure nearby because, well, that's what pirates do. Even retired pirates. It's hard to break old habits. And if that wasn't enough, Mr. Jones, 95-year-old Mr. Jones, really was a fountain of knowledge when it came to folklore of the area. And he also recalls a tale of a farmer called Edwards, who lived in a small farmhouse near the bridge 2 or 3 generations ago. So I would guess this is maybe early 19th, late 18th century. But this poor farmer, and the word poor is being used here as in didn't have much money. This poor farmer worked very hard, but for some time he was continuously molested by a mischievous ghost day and night. And again, we need to be careful with the way the word ghost is used here. It can be interchangeable. But whatever it was, this farmer certainly believed something supernatural was messing with him continuously, day or night. In the evening, when Edwards sat down in the corner eating his supper, which consisted of bread and milk, stones came down through the chimney, or ashes were thrown in his milk by some invisible hand. At another time, the ghost was heard thrashing in the barn or meddling with something continually. So the activity, which sounds relentless, even if he can't see it. I mean, stones coming down the chimney you can see, but there was just noises, continuous meddling going on all around. And while the word ghost is used in this case, this does sound very much like old reports of poltergeist activity, of fairy activity. So much of this, again, is interchangeable in these centuries. And one day, the man Edwards tries to build a fence around one of his fields. But the troublesome visitor from another world bothered him all day, throwing down the fence and the gate. So no matter how hard this man tried, this troublesome visitor from another world, which I think is a wonderful description of this ghost, this troublesome visitor from another world just kept throwing it down. And in the end, Edwards lost it. We are told that Edwards decided to address the spirit with these words. And I'll do this in Welsh first and then translate. He says, "An enw Duw, paham roit yn fy aflonyddu o hyd," which in English is, "In the name of God, why are you still troubling me? Why are you still bothering me?" Which I am assuming was probably meant as a hypothetical question. He just lost his temper and shouted to the heavens. And while it wasn't recorded what the spirit said in reply, it was generally believed by the neighbours that the spirit did speak to him, and that he revealed to the farmer some hidden treasure in an old wall not far from the house. And as a result, Edwards took down this wall and built a new house with the stones and greatly prospered. So it would appear that by evoking the name of the Lord, he had not only put an end to the haunting, but this poor, in inverted commas, farmer, this poor farmer had gotten rich. And if that wasn't enough, had built himself a new house in the process, using the stones he had knocked down to find the treasure. And that is why hardworking, God-fearing Welsh farmers can tackle any challenge, natural or supernatural. And in the end, it all seemingly works out for the best, because there's more. We are told that ever since his conversation with the spirit, his cattle and his horses soon increased in fortune, and good luck smiled upon him all around. And you might be thinking about now, this all sounds a little bit far-fetched. It's a lovely story, but this is more of a fairy tale than a real-life encounter with a ghost. Well, our folklorist assures us that about 2 years ago, when I related this story to a friend of mine who lives at Pontryd Vendigheid, to my great surprise, his wife said, yes, the account is quite true, adding that I got £500 of the ghost's money. The lady, strange to say, happened to be a descendant, or at least a near relation, of the Llanafon farmer to whom the ghost revealed the hidden treasure. What a stroke of luck. The person he was talking to was married to someone descended from that farm and had personally benefited by £500 as a result. And if that isn't proof, I just don't know what is. Even the descendants of hardworking, God-fearing Welsh farmers benefit from these supernatural rewards. Now, if you cast your minds back a few moments, you might remember that at the start of this particular account, we did look at this area being supposedly haunted by retired pirates who may have hid treasure in the area. And the implication does seem to be that maybe that is what this farmer benefited from. Was this spirit he was talking to in some way connected to these pirates, and was it connected to their treasure? Well, to wrap up this account and to wrap up this entire episode, we have another little bit of random folklore as we're in Llanafon, which may or may not shed more light onto this. And our folklorist tells us that not far from the same Llanafon bridge, there is a rock known as Craig Arogov, which means rock of the cave. Craig Arogov. And he was informed by a high-profile person in the area that there is a tradition in the neighborhood that the Romans buried treasure there. So, could this be all connected? Could this spirit who revealed the treasure to the farmer have a link to the Romans and not the pirates? Or maybe the pirates have a link to the Romans and a link to this farmer. Did the retired pirates retire there because they knew of the Roman treasure? Or is it one big coincidence that the pirates put their treasure in the same place where supposedly the Romans have also hidden treasure? In which case, why do people keep hiding expensive things near this bridge? I don't know, which frankly is why it's on this episode. It's just another puzzle piece in this bizarre jigsaw of random stories that make up this weird and wonderful episode of the Ghosts and Folklore podcast. And that really does bring us to the end of this random lucky dip of an episode. But before I wrap things up, I did want to tell you a little bit about the next episode when normal service will be resumed. In fact, it's going to be quite a special episode because the next episode marks the 5th anniversary of this podcast. 5 long years of this rubbish. And I will be celebrating by exploring one of my absolute favourite supposedly haunted places in Wales. It's a location I know very well. I've spent many a long, dark, cold night there investigating myself. It has some wonderful history, some wonderful accounts of things that other people have seen and experienced over the years, and that is all coming up on the next episode. And of course, if you don't want to miss that episode, please consider pressing the subscribe button if you haven't already, and if you really enjoyed this podcast, you can, as always, support it by treating me to a coffee via my website. If you'd like more ghosts and folklore, I've published several books on similar weird and wonderful subjects. You can find them in all good bookshops offline and on. And of course, you can follow me on social media. I'm on all of the main platforms. And as I've mentioned on previous episodes, I'm also planning a Q&A episode to celebrate the 5th anniversary. So if you have any burning questions that you'd like to ask me, please feel free to drop a message via my website or via the social media channels, and I will try my best to include it on the anniversary episodes coming up. All of which just leaves me to say thank you very much for listening. Diolch yn fawr iawn am wrando. I've been Mark Rees. This has been my random Ghosts and Folklore of Wales podcast, beaming to you from Wales to the world. And remember, if you encounter a pirate and you're not sure if it's a ghost or not, they have a nice simple motto that helps them tell if they exist or not. They think, therefore they are. I'm sorry. Until next time, no star.